On to Somalia now. The country has unveiled a new container terminal at the Mogadishu port, and that move marks a major milestone and significantly increases the country's cargo handling capacity. Now, the ceremony was led by the Minister of Ports and Marine Transport, Abdul Kader Mohammed Noor, along with the port's General Manager, Mohammed Ali.
Well, we have to congratulate Somalia for attaining that possibility of upgrading their port possibility by close to 100,000 tera units. And the reason for applauding them is that there's this bigger vision that Africa is having to achieve what we call the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, and having ports facilities across the coastal parts of.
This decision hit Washington like a lightning strike. Overnight, a key port agreement was torn apart, and the United States suddenly found itself locked out of one of the most strategic coastlines on Earth. This is not just about ships and trade. It is about power, influence, and a country once underestimated deciding it will no longer play by someone else's rules. Why did Somalia cancel the deal? What did Washington lose? And what does this signal about the future of American influence in Africa? Stay with us, because this moment could reshape the balance of power in the Horn of Africa forever.
The announcement landed like a thunderclap across diplomatic circles and shipping lanes alike. In a single move that few in Washington expected, Somalia abruptly shut down a strategic port agreement tied to the United States, sending shockwaves through the Horn of Africa and rattling assumptions about American influence along one of the world's most critical maritime corridors. What had been quietly framed as a mutually beneficial partnership suddenly became a symbol of resistance, sovereignty, and a changing global balance. For observers watching closely, this was not just the cancellation of a commercial arrangement. It was a message delivered loudly and without apology. For years, Somalia's coastline has been viewed through a strategic lens by major powers. Stretching along the Indian Ocean and edging the Gulf of Aden, the country sits beside shipping routes that carry a significant share of global trade, energy supplies, and military traffic. Any port agreement in this region carries weight far beyond containers and cranes. It touches security, counterterrorism, regional stability, and the projection of power across East Africa and the Middle East. The United States understood this well, and its engagement with Somalia's port infrastructure was never purely economic. It was about presence, access, and influence in a volatile but strategically priceless zone. The agreement at the center of this storm was designed to deepen cooperation between Somali authorities and American-linked interests in port operations and logistics. Supporters argued it would modernize facilities, boost trade, and strengthen security cooperation. For Washington, it offered a foothold in a region where rivals have been steadily expanding their reach. For Somalia, the deal was initially presented as a pathway to development and international partnership after decades of instability. On paper, it appeared to align interests on both sides. In practice, it became increasingly controversial. As details of the agreement emerged, criticism inside Somalia grew louder. Lawmakers, civil society groups, and regional leaders raised alarms about transparency, national control, and the long-term consequences of granting foreign-linked entities significant leverage over strategic infrastructure. The port was not just an economic asset. It was a symbol of sovereignty hard-won after years of conflict and foreign intervention. Questions multiplied about who truly benefited from the deal and whether Somalia was trading short-term gains for long-term dependence. Behind closed doors, pressure mounted. The Somali government faced a delicate balancing act between maintaining international partnerships and responding to domestic concerns. Public sentiment increasingly favored a more assertive stance, one that placed national interest above external expectations. In this context, the decision to cancel the port agreement emerged not as an impulsive act, but as the culmination of growing unease and political calculation. When the cancellation was confirmed, the reaction was immediate and intense. For the United States, the move represented a serious strategic setback. Access to a key maritime location was suddenly off the table, and with it the ability to shape developments in a region where influence is fiercely contested. The Horn of Africa has become a chessboard of global competition, with multiple powers investing heavily in ports, bases, and infrastructure. Losing ground here is not a minor inconvenience. It is a blow to broader strategic positioning. The symbolism of the decision mattered as much as its practical impact. Somalia was not merely rejecting a contract. It was asserting its right to decide how and with whom it engages. After years of being treated as a fragile state in need of guidance, the country signaled a shift toward a more confident, self-directed posture. The message was clear: partnerships must respect Somali's sovereignty, or they will not stand. For Washington, this moment exposed the limits of its influence. Despite years of security cooperation and diplomatic engagement, it could not prevent a partner from walking away. This reality challenges long-held assumptions about automatic alignment and raises uncomfortable questions about how American power is perceived and exercised in Africa. Influence, it turns out, is no longer guaranteed by history or assistance alone. The cancellation also reverberated across the region. Neighboring states and global actors took note of Somalia's willingness to defy expectations. In a landscape where African countries are increasingly diversifying their alliances, the move reinforced a broader trend. Governments are seeking flexibility, leveraging competition among external powers to maximize autonomy and benefits. The era of one-sided arrangements is fading, replaced by a more transactional and assertive diplomacy. From a geopolitical perspective, the implications extend far beyond a single port. The Horn of Africa sits at the intersection of trade routes connecting Asia, Europe, and the Middle East. Control and access in this region influence naval operations, commercial shipping, and crisis response. A reduced American footprint here creates space for others to step in, reshaping the balance of power along these vital corridors. At the same time, Somalia's decision carries risks. Walking away from a major agreement can strain relationships and reduce immediate investment. The government now faces the challenge of filling the gap, both economically and strategically. Yet supporters of the move argue that true stability and growth require control over national assets and the freedom to choose partners without coercion. In their view, the short-term uncertainty is a price worth paying for long-term independence. The reaction within Somalia has reflected this tension. Many citizens welcomed the cancellation as an overdue assertion of dignity and self-determination. Others worry about potential repercussions, including reduced support or diplomatic friction. This debate underscores a deeper question confronting many African states: how to engage with powerful nations without surrendering agency. For the United States, the setback invites reflection. In recent years, Washington has emphasized partnership, respect, and shared interests in its Africa policy. Yet actions on the ground are scrutinized closely, and perceptions matter. Deals that appear to prioritize strategic advantage over local consent risk backlash. The Somali case illustrates how quickly goodwill can erode when agreements are seen as imbalanced or opaque. The broader context makes this moment even more significant. Global power dynamics are shifting, with emerging actors offering alternative partnerships and financing models. African governments now have more options than ever before. This competition empowers them to negotiate harder and walk away when terms do not align with national priorities. Somalia's move fits squarely within this evolving landscape. It also challenges the narrative of inevitability surrounding American leadership. While the United States remains a major global power, its ability to shape outcomes depends increasingly on persuasion rather than pressure. In regions marked by historical intervention and sensitivity to sovereignty, heavy-handed approaches can backfire. The port cancellation stands as a cautionary tale of influence tested and found wanting. As the dust settles, attention turns to what comes next. Somalia will likely seek new arrangements that better reflect its priorities, potentially engaging a wider range of partners. Washington, meanwhile, must decide how to respond. Retaliation would only deepen the rift and reinforce perceptions of arrogance. Engagement, dialogue, and a willingness to rethink assumptions offer a more constructive path, but they require humility and patience. The episode also resonates beyond bilateral relations. It feeds into a growing discourse about Africa's place in the world and its capacity to chart independent courses. Each assertion of sovereignty, each renegotiated deal, contributes to a continent-wide recalibration of power relationships. Somalia's decision, dramatic as it is part of this larger story. In strategic terms, the United States faces a narrowing window to adapt. Maintaining relevance in Africa will depend on recognizing local agency and aligning interests in transparent, mutually beneficial ways. Infrastructure, security, and trade cannot be pursued in isolation from public opinion and political realities. The port cancellation underscores that even carefully negotiated agreements can unravel if they fail this test. For viewers watching this unfold, the significance lies not only in what was lost, but in what was revealed. A country long defined by conflict and dependency demonstrated the capacity to say no. A superpower accustomed to shaping outcomes encountered resistance. The balance of power, subtle yet unmistakable, shifted. As the Horn of Africa continues to evolve, this moment will be remembered as a turning point. It signals a future in which influence is contested, sovereignty is fiercely guarded, and partnerships must be earned rather than assumed. For the United States, the setback in Somalia is a wake-up call. For Africa, it is a reminder that the rules of engagement are being rewritten. The cancellation of the port deal is more than a diplomatic headline. It is a snapshot of a world in transition, where old hierarchies give way to new realities. Whether Washington adjusts or resists will shape its role on the continent for years to come. And as Somalia charts its path forward, the echoes of this decision will continue to ripple across oceans and capitals, forcing all sides to reconsider what influence truly means in the 21st century.